What is up, everybody? Hope that you're doing well. Get some wonderful music here for us. Wait for our brother Shaun to come on. How are you doing?
Hello.
And where are you at?
I
I feel like you're in the north.
I'm in Kyiv, actually. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, except for I gotta turn on my audio. Come on.
I'm in Kyiv,
There we
actually. I'm on a CLS. What are you listening to?
Taras Komponichenko and Korea Kozatsky.
Of course, that classic.
Yeah. The greatest hits of all time.
We'll allow everybody again. I'm actually in
We need to have
Kyiv.
that.
I'm on a CLS course, so I'm doing a medic course here.
Nice.
Actually, at the Prevail HQ, where I'm staying overnight, which is the charity I work for, which
Absolutely.
is Chris's charity that he set up in Kyiv, that I'm an ambassador for. And then, I'm back in Ukraine. So what a time to be back
Welcome
this week.
back. And, we were not on last week because you were traveling. I was traveling.
Sick.
I was over in the east.
Sick and traveling.
Yeah, and you were not well. Yes, bro.
No, I have a horse allergy, which is no more than a hay fever type thing. And literally last week it's got worse. So we found that out last week, where I was 4 days in bed and hacking up a lung, trying to keep going. But yeah, I was whacked last week. My first trip back into England in about 6 months ended with me in bed for a week.
Well, if I could warn you about anything, it'd be like, don't go to England.
I know, right? So it's exactly why I came to Ukraine.
Don't go to America. Let's see here.
No,
Let's get our friends in here. I know we have more friends coming in here, so we'll give them a moment before they join us, and that way they don't get left out. Because I don't know about you, but my messages come in going, I really wanted to see the show, and some reason why they did.
Why did you start it 5 minutes early? And we go, oh, well,
my messages come in going, I really wanted.
No echo, please. Coming back.
Exactly.
I think your twin
brother's
talking.
I want that second screen so I can read our friends telling us their interesting thoughts as we go through the checklist of what's up.
Yeah.
And I see some good people here joining in. We got Terry Fella in here. I got KKP was in here. And
I saw quite a few people on.
Researching Ukraine has joined. Actually, Researching Ukraine should follow back, because I don't think I'm following your account yet, bro. But I've seen some of your posts. You're doing a great job, and some molodets from our little friend base here in Kyiv. And let's see if I can't get a second browser up here so I don't. Because one thing I still find frustrating about some of these is that the accounts disappear before I can get my subscription and follow. There we go. Signing up for free posts. And I would also advise our friends do the same thing. Like we get our little circle going here now. There we go. Okay. Maybe later. Blah blah blah. Too many prompts. Now we get back to the list.
I got some news. I got my journalist accreditations from the UK today.
Did they finally come in?
They finally came in. So now I can apply for my journalist accreditations through Ukraine, and then we keep up the good work, and now start doing some serious reporting from Ukraine, just as it's getting interesting.
Well, let me just say, this is mine. I have to watch the QR code. This is my number one, baby. And I want you to have yours, because
I'm now a national
them.
journalist. It's taken me. It's not an easy thing to get into. To be fair, it's 6 months of hard work and writing stories every single day, and trying to convince someone in England who's sitting in an office that I'm actually a journalist, not a spy. So it's like, just Google my name. Just Google my name. It's like.
Actually, one of my favorite people at my cafe wishes you well. I said I walked in, I was just begging for my kavo. And she's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, я хочу спати." That's how I want to sleep.
Thank you, Naomi.
And I said, "But we got to do this live stream." Actually, it's with my friend Shaun, and I told her about you. And, is he okay? Is he home? Oh no, he's been home, but he's So she says, Irina says, thank you for all you're doing, and as just one of my friends here in Kyiv who kind of knows that I'm the weirdo that comes in with the tablet typing every day, frantically pissed off at somebody. You're our outload. So, I gave you a list of items we talked about and some things we can go through the audience. But before we do that, are there some things that just impulsively are on the top of your mind
Well, just
that?
see Rubio's remarks that Zelensky's lying, which you just have to take at face. You can't take Rubio at face value anymore, especially after what Trump said and done. And also, there's you can see the pressure that's being applied to Zelensky in order to get this deal done before the midterms. The same pressure is no way near applied publicly to Russia. So,
No.
personally, it's absolute bollocks. Again, from the Trump administration, I just can't see where they're going with this at all.
Well, I wrote a piece about it the other day because it's my way of expressing my absolute utter hatred of people, is to write. And I went through and I have a document of Witkoff's bullshittery and a few others when they're talking about giving up territory, and including J.D. Vance, etc. So they can't act as if they didn't say all these things in open forum many, many times, and then suddenly go, "Oh, well, Zelensky's lying." Yeah,
Make the deal. He needs to make the deal.
I can't do a Trump. I'm not very good at a Trump accent.
that's good though.
Yeah.
That's what makes me like you, is that you can't do that very well.
Well, the good thing is that now it's on record that concessions are not part of the deal. So, that's a good thing, a positive to take away from it, is that Rubio's just confirmed that concessions aren't part of the deal. So
excellent.
Yeah, so that's some good news to take away.
And I'm going to throw the link of the article I wrote called "The Law." I like when the titles disappear because I don't think in the terms of the titles of my pieces. The law they cannot give away, how Congress already constrained any U.S. recognition of Russia's stolen Ukrainian lands. And I also point out in the article, it's not an on-off switch. It's not like, oh, Congress made it to where they can't do this. It's just that, and I think this is very important to what we've had this week, including my report yesterday about the $750 million betrayal article I wrote based on a Washington Post rumor, according to Mark Rudy, that the Trump administration wants to redirect Pearl funds, basically, which is NATO money, to its own shitty war. And then Mark Rudy comes out and says at his NATO conference yesterday that, no, look, everything's moving along just fine. And, these concerns are not a problem. And I'm going to stick with the Washington Post side of it. And the reason why is the same reason why I wrote in the law that cannot give they cannot give away, is that this administration plays in the middle of an information gap. Very that's their game right there.
Absolutely.
It's the difference between what's legislation and what's free for all, and then that little ambiguity center in there. So one of the things I've noticed very cogent about this administration is that, or regime, we could just call it the Washington, D.C. regime, is that if we don't bitch about it, then they just go at it. But the moment they get flack, they kind of back down a bit and try to change how they move around. And I think that that's really kind of where we need to kind of apply the pressure. It's like, I would rather be wrong and be wrong in the right direction than not talk about it and believe that they're going to do the right thing.
Exactly. No, I think you're right. You have to look at this as not one thing, which what you say is right. Trump's administration is very good at isolating, like thing tonight, saying Zelensky's lying, monopolizing the headlines. But when you take and step back and look at the vast and the bigger picture of what's actually happening, when you go back as far as before his inauguration, where he held back, defense aid, artillery shells, where we didn't even think they were going to be here, by summer, through to his inauguration, where suddenly my wife lost her job because USAID was going, or humanitarian was pulled, all the plugs, all the work here, all the humanitarians, all the people working on the front lines lost their jobs overnight in the space of 2 or 3 weeks. That's solely going to benefit Russia. That's solely now people in the worst parts of Ukraine now looking for a job that's going to pull them away from the front lines. They can't get demining projects going. They can't get humanitarian aid in. Trump's part, and that started off a trigger with Britain reducing its foreign aid and other countries reducing its foreign aid. Trump knew exactly what he was doing. Then you had the stop-start of internet, intelligence sharing. Then you had completely pulling out of military support for Ukraine. So everything Trump's done has been against, solely benefiting Russia at every turn, to where you get to now, where you've had, over the last 6 months, the defunding of organizations that solely look into Russian war crimes. And then you've got the issue now of, maybe shifting military hardware that was due to go to Ukraine is now being shifted to fighting this war that Trump started in the Middle East. And then you've got.
And did you hear how many
sanctions.
they've blown through over? Well, you heard they blew through over 800 Tomahawk missiles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, they've had 4 years to prepare for this war, and already I think they've lost 16 aircraft, 15, 16 aircraft. They've had last time I checked, it was like 150 casualties since they've got into Iran. They're now sending 12,000 troops around working in that area on top of the 50,000 that are currently working there against a fanatical regime that's essentially, I've worked in those areas we said before, which 1 million plus people probably,
right,
from ages from 12 to fighting age males in their 60s. So who knows what? And they're gonna, this isn't a third world country. This is a country that's been supplying drones and ballistics to Russia to fire into Ukraine. This is a very
an actual
capable
civilization. And one of the things I say about Iran.
Good evening, John.
Well, two things I'm going to say about Iran. One, I watched an idiot many of you guys may know on Twitter named Joe Dubik. He's a fucking lunatic. But he was one of the many accounts in the last few days I saw saying, I'm rooting for Iran. You have to be a fucking lunatic to say, I'm rooting for Iran. I am so rooting to see that Trump and Hegseth fall on their fucking face. I don't want to see American soldiers killed.
Yeah,
I
me
don't
too.
want to see, our allies or, our, aligned forces, whatever we would call them, different, because some of them are kind of complicated. I don't want to see that happening. But at the same time, there's no way, with Shahids flying over my fucking house and your house down in Dnipro, that I'm rooting for Iran to do a fucking thing except collapse and have the civilians that I believe in take over. And that's not going to happen because, what did we just say? It's a structured civilization with the actual capacity to hack Kash Patel's fucking emails. So
Yeah. This is, you got to remember.
I have
this
to
is
laugh about that. Laugh with me about that for a minute. Kash Patel, head of the FBI, just had his fucking emails hacked, and I wrote an article about. By the way, watch out for the hackers.
You've got to look at it as within 2 weeks, the actual mission objectives were downgraded from regime change to within 2 weeks. From regime change to stopping the nuclear threat. The nuclear threat, they said they stopped last year. So this is not. This is not this is an Iran that knows exactly what it's doing. So they're not going to get the regime change. Right now, Iran's controlling the Straits. So, they're making 2 million.
He even gave them more time after saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it right now because, okay, I'm going to give them 10 days. They didn't even ask for 10 days. I'm going to give them 10 days.
And now he didn't even inform NATO allies. So you only have to see the what he's saying about NATO allies to realize he's lying for his back teeth, because he didn't inform them. Now he's struggling in a war that he's not going to take the blame for any of this. He's going to finger point, crawl out.
The news also broke in the last 24 hours that his staff says he's bored of it already. He was hoping for something. Yeah.
And now he's stuck in a war where he doesn't even control. It was open until he got his grubby little mitts on it. So now you're talking about sending in troops. And if America's going, unfortunately, you're going to have serious casualties. And this is all down to Trump. NATO doesn't work. It's clear he doesn't understand how NATO works. Straight from the off. And now the wavering of sanctions has given, Putin a windfall. This is all Trump. Yeah. This is everything he does benefits Russia. So, now he's prolonging the war in Europe.
Well, this is why I put out today's piece, which is an update from my February 9th piece on the attacks on oil facilities. That today's is Ukraine sanctions work better than America's. How drones accomplish what 4 years of financial architecture could not, and what Washington did when it noticed. And I have to pay tribute to all of our friends who sort of zeitgeist certain messages out there enough, saying, well, I believe in Ukraine's oil sanctions better than America. I know the update. I know the update because now every day is a new facility being taken out. Leningrad, of all places, a great symbolic boom, if you will.
It's
But that's
amazing
the point
pictures.
is that if you were to, like, I'm working on a piece that's still going to take me a few more days to get it really down, which is how Ukraine would win if you like literally, if I could be God and get all the aligned forces that actually have resources to win, to help Ukraine win right now, to save every life that's still in operation now. Um, how would that look? And I don't like to theorize much, as I'm not in that game. But I did it. I put a lot of time into it, and I said, okay, if all these areas were secured, and it's all based in evidence, then where would we be? Then I had to write the counter position or the updated position, which is like, so what has America done to keep us from getting there? Because that's really where I was aiming, is what is it that they have been doing that costs the lives? And I said this in response to Ryan O'Leary's post where someone was talking about, the current position and, didn't America give the most? And it was like, okay, I think that's the wrong logic. I think that the logic would be like saying a fire department came, poured a lot of water, and of the 2 or 3 fire departments that all arrived, one of them poured the most water on the fire. And before the fire was out, we stopped and go, did you say thank you? I've poured the most water, but the fire's still burning. I'm sorry, I have poured the most water, but the fire is still burning. Do I get a medal for putting the most water? You see, it is stupid. It's like you get the fucking medal when the fucking fire's out.
It's just been nominated. Zelensky's just been nominated for Nobel Peace Prize today as well. I literally looked at that and just started chuckling to myself, going,
exactly.
Somebody's going to be so pissed.
No, I mean, then they had to make up a fucking award. Funky Johnson had to go make up an award for Donald Trump because at his old senile age, he's like a kid, like a participation trophy. For fuck's sake, we are so fucked.
Yeah, we used to have a football award called the Sportsman of the Year Award, which went to the most. God. The guy who did the most. He wasn't very, a very good football player. He wasn't going to be Player of the Year, but he came every week. He played every game. He turned up, wanted to get a game, but he's a bench warmer. It's pretty much what they had to make.
When I was a kid, do you know why I actually got a triple? The reason why I got a triple in the few times I was at bat is because they were chasing everyone else but me. That's why.
Sports was not my thing.
I was much better in cycling. So let's go down the list a little bit of what put together, which is because I was just down in Sloviansk, and actually I'm going to tell Mike, Steve Woodcoff, if you see that clay right there, that's Sloviansk with the teams out in the clay, and I will not let even my mama, who I love with all my heart, is not allowed to clean my boots. She did that one time. It really upset me. No. They were already clean. Too late. But no, that's Sloviansk's clay right there. And, the fight is really heavy down in that area of Kramatorsk and Druzhivka and Druskivka and, in Sloviansk. And I was hearing a lot of the booms in the distance, and our guys were firing a good batch. Also seeing nets from north of Izum all the way into Sloviansk and throughout the city, and watching teams in Sloviansk putting up nets in the civilian sectors. It's a serious situation. Seeing essentially the fortifications and the freshly, like, super impressive trenches that are off the charts. They're so impressive they look like AI, except for they're not. They're for real. And there was over 6,000 Russian troops killed in this spring offensive this last week. So.
Oh, no, old chap. It's not a spring offensive anymore. It's now a spring-summer offensive.
Thank you.
Because of the drastic casualties they've had already. It's now. Actually, it's not. Yours. I mean, it's. My wife's up in Kramatorsk this week. She was sending me pictures of the drone nettings and everything like that. So, yeah, I mean, going back, I mean, just to finish on what we was talking about, this you have to take a step back and put everything in line. Now you've got this week, which is now the whitewashing of war crimes. You've still got that going on with this, State Duma being invited to Capitol Hill and doing a tour. And I mean, this is an indicted war criminal, essentially, who's still invading, who's still saying today that he wants to take Donetsk Oblast. This is a come down. Yet it's extremely poor from the Americans to entertain these, the State Duma in Capitol Hill. It's just dreadful.
Yeah.
And there you've got you've still got a spring offensive, which we knew was coming. That spring offensive has started, but sort of gone very badly already for the Russians. It's looking incredibly bad. They're not going to, the Ukraine have been exceptionally good at hitting 200 kilometers back from zero line and taking pretty much all the support elements out. And most of these guys are coming in now, dying before they ever get to see an enemy trench. So you can imagine the morale on the Russian side at the moment. It's just, if you're going to get called up, you're going to die.
I would have to actually imagine the morale on the Russian side. Is that morale? Is it in the room with us?
Yeah, there is none.
Remember, I've been really obsessed with juxtaposing both Trump and Putin against Sun Tzu's 13 chapters. And one of the reasons why is originally, and it started with our conversation, is that back in Bush's era of invading Iraq, literally in the first opening month, I said, but Sun Tzu warned that he who seizes cities is the worst of militarists. In other words, there's all these things you should have done before that moment. And but another one is the 7 conditions by which he can predict a victory. And one of the key items in there is which general has the morale of his troops. And here, on the worst fucking days, no less, the morale of the soldiers is wired differently because of defense than it is for the Russian, who's like, why am I here, bro?
Yeah, why am I here?
Because you're not in prison. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm not in prison. I surrender.
You've got, you're an American. Ask me this question.
I'm sorry.
I'm interested. No, don't apologize.
I'm working on just being Ukrainian now.
I just think
you are correct.
You're in a better position to answer me this question. Why is it that since wavering the sanctions, and allowing, I think it's something like 150 million a day, he's probably, I think it's up now. Reading the Times, I think it's considerably higher than that now.
Mm-hmm.
Why, after Russia has openly said it's supporting Iran militarily and with intelligence, is the American public not absolutely going nuts at the prospect of Trump raising sanctions to pay money to help Russia and Iran target their own service personnel? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons why. So if you look at Rep. Luna, the lunatic, it's as if her name gives you a prediction of where she's going with this. Like literally bringing Russian diplomats in, and I have their names. I'm going to finish up my workup on all of those particular individuals because they're all KGB. They're always KGB. But there's a couple of theories I have about it, which is if I was to say the population at large sees Russia as this formidable state and it's a superpower, if they were to see it for what it is, a rust bucket, with oil, that's a conglomeration of ethnicities that don't necessarily want to be Russian, they would have a different view. And they don't have that view because the American education system fucking sucks. So that's part of it. Number two, my theory that was part of the good Russian is not coming to save you article, which got the most traffic I've had on this account since I started this account, is that I think that the Navalny aspect of looking for the good Russian is sort of wired in an American naivety. And it's the theory behind that was even deeper in my next piece, which was published the same day, more of a poetic response of the same message, which is, how can you stop a genocide if you have tickets to the Bolshoi? Or some need to hear the Bolshoi ballet. If they don't know, I always mean the ballet. If it's sports, you can't blame the poets, or it's the ballerina, or it's the the art museum director or something. And that is not true of Iran. That is not true. And also, it's a different kind of racism. And I told every Iranian this: I apologize ahead of time. You're not going to get much sympathy because you're not white enough. And America's policy is built in racism, deeply built in racism. Bombing brown people, very fucking easy. It's been policy across administrations for a while. But back to Russia, there's this way in which Russian active measures on the culture scene has still permeated American culture just enough that it mollifies it. And then the last thing, and I want to credit our kind of collective supporters that really are hip to this, is that the Trump allies who tried to pound the Russia, Russia, Russia thing, oh, here they go again, Russia, Russia, Russia. I think they succeeded in numbing the people who know that he's complicit, knowing he is a Kremlin asset, into just going about their business, the fatigue of it. And I think that there's a little bit of that. So I really think that those components coming together are why we don't see the same level of outrage that those of us who are here who see it have it, even if we're American. That's my theory.
Yeah, it's quite a strange one because it would be like Russia paying America to kill Russians, and you just wouldn't get that. Yeah, but now you've feasibly got Americans wavering sanctions, paying Russians to kill Americans, which is just balmy when you think about it. And it should be should be on every front page news why that's happened. Yet it's nowhere. It's not.
Also, I
getting
wonder how
traction.
many people are tuned into the news at a certain quality level. I don't have a metric by which I can tell how much of the population is really tuned into news, other than news that might be the handful of headlines that they're watching for. If they're not really news, junkies of some sort, I don't know. I mean, I should go check that out, but I have not had the time to figure out the common news consumption rate of American population.
It will take a chinook of elite soldiers to go down before anyone in America goes, we're paying, we're waving sanctions on Russia, who are funding Iran, who have just taken out, made some huge casualties before somebody actually says something. I hope not, but it will do. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a huge chaotic mess before somebody says something. Hold on, we just allowed Russia to gain $30 billion through wavering sanctions that's gone straight into killing US service personnel,
Right.
or Ukrainians. I mean, it's, for whatever reason you think Trump invaded Iran, whether it's Epstein, he's just a lunatic, he's, flip-flops, whatever your reason is, this is all wrong. This is totally wrong what he's doing. It just doesn't seem to this one very thing doesn't seem to pick up any traction. And I'm just, as a Brit, baffled why.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think actually I'll say that
none of us
there
want to
are.
see Americans get killed, like you said. We teach, we train Americans in what it's like to operate in Ukraine and my life in captivity, and hopefully it will save some of them. So I'm not. Somebody said I'm ashamed to be American. Don't be ashamed to be American, because might look like Trump. I had to swallow my tongue for 1 year while people were saying, Sean, Trump could be really good for Ukraine. And I was like,
Right.
I don't see it. He's just put Tulsi Gabbard in. He's got Luna there. These are all pro-Russian people that he's got in place. Oh my God, it's just like really bad. I can hear your keyboard so loud. You've got a new microphone or something.
No. I have this big clunky cheap
Holy
version that has all the
shit.
Ukrainian Cyrillic, and it's got the biggest, like, 1990s level plastic.
Oh my God.
Oh
Sounds
my
like you've
God.
just added that in as a side effect. But no, I mean,
Actually, on my
literally.
screen at the bottom right now, that I can't show you without flipping my phone around, I have the video clip you posted a couple days ago about the attack on St. Andrew's Church Monastery in Lviv.
Oh.
And I was trying to respond to someone who's trying to get into our space here. But seeing that, it goes to me one of the things in our list here about the record barrage this last week, the 1,000 drones that were flying over. Now, here in Kyiv, before we get to the Lviv side, I forget what time it is. Around 9:30 in the morning, I was across town doing some interview work, and air raid goes off. I'm like, okay, and then I get the map of what was coming in for drones. I was like, oh shit, how, what, huh? And I live on left bank, which is the east side of the river, and I was working on right bank, and I was there until 5 o'clock in the afternoon when I finally shelled out for the taxi to get back home. It went on for hours. They basically closed down the airspace by keeping 1,000 drones above us, and that was followed up by, um, the attacks that you saw, and more than just Lviv, but the one that kind of made the most visual headlines was the attack on the church there in Lviv. So,
Well,
yeah,
it's as I wrote in my piece, literally said that there's always been attacks on civilians, always been attacks on women and children. What you've got now is a very concentrated effort because of the failures of Russia on the battlefield and their little success is now that they're actually increased their targeting of children. We had while Luna was showing the doom around the Capitol Hill, we had a jet drone fly into Dnipro, fly straight into an apartment block. We had explosions from drones later that night. We had Lviv this week, which is there's no reason other to hit Lviv and the UNESCO World Heritage Site only to promote a reaction because he can't make the successes on the battlefield. All that does, he knows he's got an incendiary drone in there. He knows what he's doing. He's going to hit a very poignant spot where Western media can pick up the headlines and send it out everywhere because it projects Russia as a strength. It projects
right,
what Putin wants the world to see is that Russia's bombing Ukraine. What it's not showing is the weakness of Russia. This is a weak Russia now. This is a Russia
right,
that's
right.
recycling old Soviet playbooks because it's had a failed winter campaign that failed last winter and the winter before that. It's
Yeah,
running out of ideas. This is a Russian government clearly out of ideas, clearly getting bombed to shit. Their financial this week just goes to show you Trump's wavered sanctions at a point Russia's struggling. This week they've gone out to their oligarchs begging for money because
yeah,
their coffers, their
yeah.
debt.
Do you want to invest in the war?
Everything Trump does helps Russia. Everything he
And
does.
what's the return on the dollar or the ruble?
Yeah, I mean it's phenomenal. So
How do you
all
get
this
anyone
is
to
because
invest when
Russia's
there's no
struggling.
return on the ruble? It's
You
crazy.
don't
I want to
halt
actually
free
respond to
media. Sorry, go on.
No, I want to respond to our good brother here researching Ukraine who said, 1,000% don't be ashamed to be America. Work hard to make US better. The struggle will never end. It's how democracy and liberty work. Amen. We are on the same page. The reason why I started broadcasting on Substack was that we have so many American friends that needed to wake the fuck up to saving the country that is worth saving. It can go through 1,000 changes to make it better. That's fine. But I broadcast as a Texan American in Ukraine, and amen. We're on the same page. So thank you for saying it out loud to make me say it out loud as well. So I wanted to call to that. But back to the how Russia is losing, and as I'm going to quote my friend Edward, why does he throw oxygen on the monster? So every time Russia is losing, there's only one ally in the world that comes up to throw the safety net to him, and that's Trump.
Trump, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It is, you can't get, this is, as I put this week, how many times are you going to call it a coincidence before you realize that when you start saying Trump's working for Russia, then it all starts to make fucking sense. I mean, literally, I was, dead against this compromise. I just thought I could never see a US president turning on his own country.
Mm-hmm.
Yet now look at what's going on. Everything is now, he's giving Putin money to carry on his war in Europe. He's
Mm-hmm.
now fucked up Iran because he wanted regime change. He can't do that. Now Iran's running the streets.
Right.
Anything. If they negotiate the fact that he negotiates with the Iranian regime, and somehow in this negotiation they come away with dual ownership of the straits, that's a major win for Iran
Right.
because they never had that in the first place. And what's that going to do all the way along, international waters? It's going to give everybody the same ideas. So, what Trump's done is not involve allies because they understand what's going on, started a war in the Middle East that's just solely benefiting Putin. You have to now ask questions as a country. Hold on, is our president really compromised? Are we really paying Russia to kill our American servicemen? Because that money's going to go to Iran to help them. The drones are already going to Iran. Intelligence here is already going to Iran from Russia. So, how on earth can Trump justify lifted sanctions on Russia? I mean, it's bizarre paradox. I think I wrote about it, just saying it's a bizarre paradox.
Well, there were
Find
actually
ourselves.
Senator Tom Tillis, and I'm going to draw a blank on who the Democrat was because I mostly pay attention to who the Republican was, are actually filing a bill to sanction Orban and Orban's establishment. And this is after Trump just, sent his endorsement, and that's why I wrote my piece this week of basically that CPAC, the blood on the banner, how CPAC became Moscow's most useful Western conference, because Matt Schlapp has been basically sucking up to these Kremlin stooges, like a whole batch of them, Georgian Dreams over there, Robert Fico, Viktor Orban, and then of course during the 7 hour, I had to go through the whole transcription of this 7 hours of bullshit. It was a who's who of Kremlin assets,
Fico's in trouble of his own now, isn't he? I read this week.
Yeah.
He's now being investigated for corruption and treason. So, I mean, I think maybe things.
I wrote a piece about it. I hope maybe they read my piece where I said, Gazprom, just look at the fucking money from Gazprom. Actually, all credit goes to Inform Napalm for their Babakov leaks that came out a few years ago, because I have their entire archive and I'm working on a book about Inform Napalm. And so I'm going through all these leaks again, and they're still relevant. These are like posts from 2 or 3 years ago. I'm like, hold on, and now I know them, so I'm like, hey, do you have any more of those emails of? So for those who don't know about Inform Napalm and the various Ukrainian cyber alliances out there, they get the digital warriors go out and exfiltrate stolen emails from people like Vladimir Surkov and Robert Fico's teams, and then they expose them. And what they expose over and over again is a corrupt network of sanctions evaders, of hybrid warfare operators. Like, I'm still working on my Surkov update for Odessa, which I already wrote one article out of, but I'm going through more email trenches. And like with Robert Fico, they clearly show that he's up to his eyeballs in Gazprom, money.
Who've been helping to smuggle children.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. Fucking criminals. Oh my god. Ugh. We got a lot of people. Y'all are chatterboxes
apparently,
today. I love it. I can't see Sean's face because I've got so much text. Okay, so here's a few things from our viewers real quick while we're talking. Like, it's still going to My Kings. Okay, My Kings is good. Needs it every day. You're correct. If you have to wait for another schedule, you have not learned anything about Euromaidan. It went on every day. They didn't have like, oh, you're gonna meet Saturday. Yeah, no, Sunday, Nadila. Oh, Nadila. No, Ponadila. No, it's Nadila. It's like, no, it was every fucking day. So yeah, and that is what's missing with No Kings. But otherwise, is Trump going to plant various bombs all over the U.S. and blame it on terrorist group of his choice, and then send them from outside the country and blame them on a country? Just heard this from somebody. Now, first off, Lisa, I'm going to have to correct you on one thing. When you say you heard it from someone, give me something better than that. You know me. I heard it from someone. That goes back to
lady.
I just read. Hold on. Let me write it down, and then I'm going to read it. I'm just picking on you, Lisa. Anyway, will he do that? He may not have to plant anything. He has lunatics that will do that anyway. I don't know if you remember a thing called January 6th, the insurrection. But it was kind of a big deal. So I think that, yes, there will be a distraction, and I have seen that ICE agents have been chased the fuck out of LA by East LA. One of the best videos on the internet. Isn't that great? Like, damn. Bayfo is big.
Yeah.
But back to Orban. So Orban works to block 90 billion euros on the 19th to try to stop the loan to Ukraine. And essentially, we see the EU alliance is really strong for Ukraine to the point of Orban is essentially the pariah. They're also the most corrupt EU member. So, for as much as they bitch about Ukraine, I'm a reminder of viewers, I say this all the time, look at the Transparency Corruption Index. Ukraine has been on the uptick for 25 years at least. The only time it went down was during Yanukovych, which tells you what the model is. It's Russia at the bottom, and the Ukrainians are trying to get away from it. And Hungary is going down, Slovakia is going down, and the United States is going down. And that's important. Just do it by the metrics and the numbers, and you will see it so clearly because I'm a dumb monkey. And as a dumb monkey, I can figure it out.
Yeah, Vance is going there next week, isn't he? Or was he the week after? I can't, just before the elections. He's going to try and push Orban's candidacy. That's now US. Can you imagine if a European country went in to speak to Joe Biden?
Yeah. I remember when a guy named Volodymyr Zelensky went to America to go to the artillery factories that were
that's a good shout.
making,
That's a
thank
good
you,
shout.
Giacomo, like, what are you doing here, you little shit?
That is a good shout. Yes, Martin, I'm planning the book tour. I literally
Winnipeg.
have been sick. I've been to the UK. I've literally been to the Isle of Man. I'm now on a medic course. I'm just meeting myself coming back at the moment. But sort of Wednesday next week, I can tackle, other stuff and get in contact with you about Canada. But I'm going to Toronto. I'm going to Edmonton. And then I'll be hopefully looking to do another one if there's one about if we can do it. So
You got it.
But yeah, I don't like leaving my wife too long on her own. Literally in the last 5 weeks, I spent 4 days at home. I'm now trying to get this. It's quite essential to get this medic course done because of going to the front lines. So to try and get my TCCC medical quals before I go and do something stupid and report from the front lines, see some friends. So I've got to get this medic course done. Work requires it. So I've literally got 4 days I'm doing now. Cramming 30 years of medic course into 4 days. So,
Ugh.
I did March today. So, like massive hemorrhaging and airways, respiratory, I commit circulation and head and hemorrhaging. So it's all in here today.
She's not in here now, but one of my friends chewed me out for not having done all of that stuff, and she's sort of right. And I wouldn't have noticed it until you just said all of that.
Journalists put it all to the back, this sort of stuff. It's only because I'm ex-military that I've seen the front lines. I know exactly I live in Dnipro, mate. I should know all this. If you carry a tourniquet, if you know how to use a tourniquet, you should be carrying one in Ukraine. Honestly, so many people don't, and you should be carrying one everywhere with you. To be fair,
that's right. I was actually just there when you were still in UK, and literally at the train station when another air raid went off, and I have different tensions than other people. Like I don't panic about much. I panic when the old lady downstairs who runs the door hasn't been given her cash for the concierge fee. Because then I have to walk by and go, yeah, забув, не забув, немає грошей зараз, I don't have cash, I just have my card. And then that fear that like, I gotta open the door, I gotta confront that's tangible for me. Fear of drones or like the artillery boom, like I was asked by one of my friends when I was come back from Sloviansk, my experience there, like fear, I'm like, I don't really experience that. That's not what I go through. I'm more like, did we get the wiring to the microphone in so that when the soldier's telling us about the drone operation, that it works? It's not a fear thing. It's a focus on the job, get it done, boom. Yeah. You don't even, in fact, when you're out there enough, you don't think about it. Your sensibilities are wired to know that it's going to be constant, a constant deep boom going on, So, but the reason why I'm pivoting to the medic side is I've used it as a really good measure of the bullshit artists. And I'm not much of I don't play softly about bullshit artists. And my metaphor for it is that if you're around me and you get shrapnel wounds that are serious, you're probably gonna fucking die. And that's my fault because I don't know anything about that. There's a lot of other things I know, and that's the one I don't. Now, it's not because I find that funny. I actually am just trying to make a point that bullshitting your way through things, like, trying to suddenly pretend that you're a doctor because your dad was a doctor, or that you're in some category because you were around such a thing. I'm really tired of that in America, tired of that in the news sphere, and as a person living in Ukraine for 4 years during the entire full scale war, I'm tired of our supporters and the general class around us bullshitting their way through things, which is why I had to go learn how the weapons worked, which is why I had to learn how all that procurement works, how all of it is distributed. And I still have no idea how to save a life with any of the gear that sits here in the bag that I have, just in case. Like, what do I do? I don't know. Throw the bag at the drone. We actually were talking about our IFAC kit. Like, what's the IFAC kit for? It's like, that's what I'm throwing at the fucking drone.
Dude, yeah, I mean, I pray you never have to use it, but
Same here.
it's yeah, I'm a big one of, like, if I got gear, I need to know how to use it. It's people
Yeah.
are looking to me to do that, and having worked in trauma on the front lines for nearly 15 years,
Right.
working in some of the most dodgiest places in the world. I know exactly what can happen, and unfortunately, it comes along when you least expect it. When you're, we used to have a joke in my platoon. It's always when you go for a shower, or you're going for a shit, or it's always those times when it just sort of shit kicks off, or the shit hits the fan. And it's never when you're prepared for it or ready for it. It's normally when you're least prepared and least ready for it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it is really important here what prevailed as where I'm sitting now. You see all the signs. I'm in the training
Yeah.
room, mines, explosions. We do mine awareness. But yeah, if the guys aren't clearing them, then they're going to teaching a lot of the school children at schools, the teachers, about mine awareness, what to do if they come across
Yeah.
one. Russia chucks this shit everywhere. So and the kids all play with it, pick it up. So you have got to teach the kids about sort of basic med aid,
Yeah.
and what mines look like, and what to do if they come across one. UXO is the big one, unexploded ordnance that's in the cities, in places like Kharkiv and Prokrovsk and all those villages. Tons and tons of this stuff. It's gonna. If this war ended tomorrow, it's going to take more than our lifetime to clear the mines.
That's right.
And that's not including the drones and the UXO that's sitting around on the battlefield. So it's everywhere. It's disgusting, and this is all Russia's doing.
And it was so disturbing when I was in Mykolaiv and Kherson and in Kharkiv going to some of the schools. I went there to survey some work done by E-Recovery Fund and Ministry of Foreign Affairs Denmark. All the deaths, by the way, Denmark. And it's one of the emotional traumas I feel collectively with my fellow Ukrainians is that we have a generation who've grown up with a training that none of us should have to have. Of neural wiring born in air raids, born and raised in times of Shahid drone moped sounds. And many of y'all who are supporters see the videos of an older sibling who's maybe 5 or 6 telling a younger sibling of 1 and 2, oh no, that's this sound and that's that sound, of shit that should never have to be heard. But those signs, I've seen exactly what you're talking about with the UXO teaching aids designed literally for children, so that when they go on about their lives, and for instance, the one that stands out in my mind is in Mykolaiv. Oh, correction, Mykolaiv and Chernihiv, both of them stand out in particular. And they had just a range of things that no child should have to walk into their life and learn in school.
No.
There's all that other stuff they should be learning, but these children have to learn this path, and that's why we have to
That's
destroy
what makes it
Russia.
even more. People should write to their MPs. They should write to their leaders. It makes it even more sickening when you see, people like the Russian Duma walking around Capitol Hill, whitewashing all these atrocities. How do you think people here feel? They're not daft, and it's not. Ukraine isn't a third world country that doesn't see that happening. I mean, that is disgusting. I mean, this is an indicted ICC war criminal for stealing children that they're now inviting the ferry regime into the control centers of America. What are you going to, who are you going to invite next? ISIS?
Right.
This is the same week where they executed a Ukrainian soldier for social media clicks. I mean, this is what Russia is. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to see all these crimes, war crimes, just get whitewashed.
Exactly. And speaking of which, at the beginning of our program, one of the things, the reason why I had my keyboard out is I was getting my invite to this year's memorial event in Bucha next in a few days from now. And I went last year, and I'll be going again this year. And I was there in the first days after Russians were defeated and thrown out of Bucha. And even though a lot of those buildings like Vokzalna Street, literally, I don't even recognize it when I go through there because there was a big effort to basically just rebuild it all. And then you go just 2 blocks over and there's still destroyed buildings. But no one forgets what happens. No one forgets either there or I was just in a Zoom a week ago, essentially a week ago, like today and, like throughout the weekend. So Thursday through Sunday. And the forest there on the north side along Shakespeare Street of all names. I was when I first realized what street we were on, when the Russians were liberated out of there. And, for those who don't know the story, when I went there, there's a few things that sometimes emerge in my mind later when I think to share what we learned was that we asked several people at the center we were dropping off aid, where do we go for the mass graves? Because we're going to film and talk about it. Well, they're like over there. Okay, so we actually did not know where the excavation was taking place because we were in the main city itself, which is not terribly big, but it's just big enough where we're like, okay, so over here, and then we stopped somewhere else. Where is it? Well, it's like over there. Like, what's the over here, over there? And it's because I hadn't processed yet that nearly everyone I was talking to had lived underground in basements or like hiding the entire time. So the whole terror world that they were experienced was very isolated on one level, very subterranean comes to mind, that they couldn't have known, so they have to guess what happens on the outside. And then later interviews confirmed this, that life in occupation is fucking hell.
It's awful.
So one of the phenomena when I'm standing out there is that I still remember like that no one exactly knew where to point at first. And that's a state of shock that was happening, Whereas in Bucha, there was, specifically behind the church, which I've been to many times, and I know the father who runs that church, and I really appreciate him. He's a really good man, very, very, very good man. I'm going to give him a good hug in a few days. But no one forgets the war crimes that are happening or happened, and that's why when Steve Witkoff and these fuckers, are just so eager for a deal, so eager to make it just go away, and it's not our
they want to
war.
take away my house. The
Thank you for bringing that up. I was
fucking
yeah.
house.
Bring that to our viewers, please.
Because
tell them where your house
at the end of the day, my wife had an apartment where we met in Mariupol. The Russians have stolen it. They've targeted her, branded her as literally a terrorist or an extremist because of me and because she works for a civilian organization that's considered to be a terrorist organization at one time, Halo, of all things. So we can't go back and get our house. They know that. They've stolen it. They've done that to millions of people here.
Right.
6 million forced refugees, internally displaced refugees in Ukraine. Another 6 million caught in the occupied territories who can't get out.
Right.
So they've stolen our house. We can't get it back. And you come along, Witkoff, who's never even been to Ukraine, who's telling, pretty much saying he's a peace envoy. How can you be a peace envoy if you've never been to one of the countries involved, who not the aggressor? He's been there plenty of times, but the country that's been attacked, you've never been to. yet you're a peace envoy.
And he's
This is
being
a guy
sent to
that's
deal
willing to
with
give away my
Iran and
house.
Israel and Ukraine all at once because he's the master deal maker.
They're
Like,
a bunch of fucktards,
yeah,
to put it bluntly. I mean,
of
they're
course.
just they have no idea of the region. You know, Witkoff can't even get the towns right or the geography right. He can't remember his ass from his elbow half the time when he's talking about the places. Yeah, this is a guy that believes that we should take Russia at their word. This is a guy that Russia that slaughtered over 25,000 women and children in just Mariupol. And every time Witkoff utters his words, I lose my rag. I lose my temper. I hate
Yeah,
Trump. Do you think I'm ever going to give this up? I hate losing. I'm never going to give this up. Nor
yeah,
is all these other Ukrainians that have literally been forced from their houses or tortured or executed or, you know, and it's still going on. Yet, you know, just by inviting the State Duma to Capitol Hill just pisses on everybody that's had their, you know, houses stolen or have been tortured or had their kids stolen. I mean, that's what Trump's essentially doing, is
right.
pissing on Ukraine, because he doesn't put any emphasis on Russia, you know, and that's just. I'm certainly never going to let it go. I'm certainly not going to stop
Not
fighting for
possible.
it. You just can't do it.
Yeah, не можна. And let me add, I want to come to the announcement from Budanov here in just a second that a potential exchange may happen for Easter, which is, we hope so.
We hope
Um,
so.
there are times where I have to fight back, choking up. There are people that you and I both know still in captivity, and
Mm.
people who are like friends of mine. And today is my friend Svetlana's 30th birthday, and her fiance, Leonid, 501 Battalion, 36 Marines, is in captivity. So I want everyone to wish her uh, a happy birthday by wish of that Leonid comes home in this exchange. But one thing that just really boils my blood is that when these guys come home, and for those who watch United 24 with these releases and some of these stories, like my friend Olga Kurtmaleva and her husband Ruslan, who just came home, is they're from Berdyansk. You know, they're from the areas that are not occupied. So when the husbands come home, everything they left that they were fighting for is an occupation now. They come back to recover as displaced people, and all it does for those of us like you and me who are so aligned. And I know we have a few people in here who are also either in Ukraine or at least heavily tied to what we're doing here. We know too many people that have been displaced, and in particular, like I said, the guys who come out of captivity or who are still in captivity that hopefully come home soon, is that what they fought for is in captured territory. And to think that America would not fight for it actually stuns some of the guys who had just come home in the last year. That is not the America they went into captivity knowing.
Mm.
You know, they did not go into captivity with an America that was ready to just fucking hand over everything to Russia. That's not the America any Ukrainian I know understood. Until this last year, they're beginning to say, and actually, I'll even go further to say most Ukrainians go, well, no, it's not Americans, it's Trump. Yeah, and I'm the one that had to talk out of that mindset. I'm the American. And they're like, no, we know Americans are not like that. It's like, and it's true. They're actually completely correct. I'm just so tired of it as an American. I'm
Mm.
sick of it as an American. It is not what I stand for. It's not what, our yeah,
No, it's depressing to talk about when Ukrainians have to class Americans in three different categories. It's like just Ukrainians being polite, you know. So it's when everything goes right, it's America. When it all goes wrong, it's the Trump administration, and somewhere along the line, there's that Biden lot. You know, it's like it's the way the world is. At some point, though, Americans, I hope that at the midterms go the way we hope. Trump's going to be useless after November anyway. So
yeah,
that's he can't go in for a third term. He's not going to be able to do anything for 2 years. I think hopefully that's the way it's going now. Even Americans are
yeah,
just, I know certainly the world is absolutely fucked off with Trump.
For the most part, yeah.
England, UK hate Trump.
Whichever of those countries that don't vote neutral or with Russia, which is only a handful of them, the rest of them are like, can we be done with this bad drama?
Yeah, the guy's a fruitcake. I mean, absolute lunatic.
But part of the reason why in my piece that I wrote about, where we're at with the law that they cannot give away, how Congress has already constrained any U.S. concessions for land, is that the metric continues to be, and I think I'm right in this, that the stall of action by Trump by the allies, including allies in the United States, people who are like officials and others trying to slow this down whenever he makes an impulsive, stupid decision, is because in that gap of time, there's usually enough pressure to make the Trump administration move back to a position that's more workable until we get him out of office. And I've seen the UN do it. I've seen NATO, do it. I've seen the handful of like France, Germany, Canada, and well, maybe not Canada, but UK. I don't think Canada has much pull over him. No offense to Canada, by the way. I'm not saying that's an offense to Canada. I'm just about who gets the phone call in and gets a response, right? So when UK calls up, France calls up and say, well, no, we're not getting in this war with you with Iran. He can throw his little tantrum, but ultimately they get their way. They do have a very important bearing on this out of control ship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, makes you sick sometimes. But
every day.
I think it's a wake-up call. It's just going to take time for people to adjust. I mean, economically, countries are weirdly looking to China now, not America. Europe's going to buy from Europe, not America. This is going to have a real tourism's down in America. I've cancelled my trip. I didn't realize how bad that is now in America, that tourism is just really plummeted in America.
Yes.
So I set a fashionable, I don't think I said it, I'm being too, but I'm part of a fashionable trend because of Trump. I swore I'd never go to that country while he's the president. I think I've given him every doubt, and now I have no doubt he's working for Russia at all. Too many coincidences, and now probably himself, because I bet your bottom dollar there's compromise on him. I bet the Epstein files are something to do with that. He's a part of that. So it's like you said earlier, one of the reasons I got into journalism is because I was sick of hearing Witkoff talk about Ukrainian people must be happy. This is a guy that's never even been to Ukraine. How the fuck would he know who's happy? I don't know anybody that's happy with the Trump administration, especially Witkoff. Right. If anybody knows who Witkoff actually is, most guys on the front lines won't know who.
They do here.
Yeah, Kyiv, and the cities, but I mean,
even in Sloviansk, I was shit talking Witkoff, and I really love. I'm going to tell our Azov buddies that I was interviewing. So we were out with 3rd Battalion, and one of the main guys we interview was struggling to speak English, and I always tell everyone we interview, Ukrainskую movu все добре, я перекладаю, I'll translate, no problem. But then the guy standing next to us when we got to kind of shooting shit started speaking English with us just perfectly fine the entire time. I was like, wait a minute. So we got English speakers standing here with us, and we're like struggling with my super awesome Ukrainian skills. But when I say Pizdets Witkoff or something easily, immediately, I don't have to translate who he is. They know who Witkoff is, he's a punchline across that, but that's about as much as known about him, is that he winds up in the headlines as the saboteur of freedom, the saboteur of liberation, So he's, in a way, karmically, some of their history is forever etched in stone. That's the way I see it, is that they have etched their name permanently in the record as something worse than, like, Neville Chamberlain is in heaven going, God, thanks so much. I was the biggest shitbag until these guys came along.
When you start believing the IRGC over the American government, there's a serious fucking problem with trust issues, right? And I can watch when Trump was saying, "Yeah, we're negotiating," and I can't remember, one of the US presenters was just saying, everyone just went, that the IRGC just went, no, we're not talking to them. He's negotiating with himself, and everyone just started to pound Trump because everyone was believing the IRGC, and they're a bad lot. They're
Exactly.
extremely bad lot. Yet
Exactly.
people are now believing the IRGC over Trump because he just bullshits so much.
Well, he uses such, I'm kind of worn out. Like, I know he won't see this, and his little butt polyps won't see this, but I'm worn out with the bad pitch language, ahead of schedule. Like, you're not building a casino, Bled. You're not doing the things you used to do. Under budget, ahead of schedule, which was always his bullshit lines. And I used to nickname him Captain Superfluous because everything was the biggest, the best, the most of all time. Like, everything was that way. And I didn't publish this piece, but I worked on a piece about a month ago when he said that. Was it less than a month ago when he said that Zelensky was like P.T. Barnum, and I went, no, like the guy. If there's anyone like P.T. Barnum, and even P.T. Barnum had some integrity, I think, it's Trump, because P.T. Barnum made it about himself. The whole pitch was, the great, superfluous, the greatest show of all time, etc. So Trump is like exactly the politician of the P.T. Barnum side. Zelensky, for all the criticisms I know that live of him here in Kyiv, and across the country, actually. So it's not in that category. There's other reasons why Ukrainians have an issue if they have one, but it's not because he's the P.T. Barnum of Ukraine. That's just not a thing. In fact, I don't know of someone here who's quite well. I'm gonna keep the name out. There's a couple people I know who are a little bit like P.T. Barnum. So yeah, there's a couple people. But
I agree.
yeah. I
No,
think
I
that
agree. Yeah.
I think that ultimately he literally makes it all about himself.
It's always about Trump. It's Trump first, not America first. I mean, the MAGA lot are so duped. I mean, think about no new wars. Well, that's just a load of garbage. I'll
Yeah.
solve Ukraine in 24 hours. Didn't happen. You're now in a new never-ending war for the next 20 years in Iran now. It's not going to end. It's
Oh my
escalated.
God.
So this is a regional conflict that Trump's now turned into a global conflict. Same people, same forces, same equipment, same drones. Now money being pumped into Russia. It's now a global conflict. We've been in a world war for quite a while, as we keep saying. As much as everyone keeps denying it and burying their head in the sand, Europe's as much to blame, as anybody was so slow to get off the mark. The only thing I think, I'm not a big Starmer fan by any means, but I think that one of the best things he's done was to not jump straight in and support Trump, because they understood the situation, what was going to happen, what was going on. I mean, Trump could have just shot himself in both feet by doing this. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of US service personnel is probably going to lose their life, going forward, which is ultimately sad, because if he'd have just got his preparations right, involved allies, talked to people, then, it could have been a whole different scenario, but he didn't. He didn't involve anybody, and now he's throwing a paddy because he spent a year slagging off British veterans and all those people within NATO and commitments to Afghanistan. He's slagged and got into our country's politics in Europe and the UK, having his 2 cents worth interfering in our political system. He's bad-mouthed all of us, not included us in advance, and now he's kicking up a storm because nobody's helping him after he's just slagged us off for the last year. I mean, he's not even apologised to the veterans in the UK, Denmark.
No.
He's not said a word, but he's a fucking shit stain, to put it bluntly. And I can't stand anybody that really supports him. I haven't got time of the day for people that are ignorant enough to support the death of their own service personnel. If you support Trump, he's paying Russia now to attack US service personnel. No question. There's no getting out of it. If you support Trump, you're a fucking idiot, to be fair, in my view.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that concerns me is that we have people who are still missing how Russia is attacking the very fabric of society in a way that even like I've said this about MAGA viewers for the long time of Fox News is that what really pisses me off most about Fox News is that I still believe in Americans who I have such a radically different view of the world than they do, but they're still humans. They still have a Maslow's hierarchy of needs in their life. And regardless of our view of the world and that they're wrong and I'm not, you know, that they're still human. And I still care that someone wakes up in the morning and lies to their biases and lies to their bigotries and keeps that going. And people who've known me for most of my life know that that is a truism about me because that's usually where we bond again. Maybe that's because I have family members who are in that category and they'll say, yeah, like, you know, he's still my cousin or he's, you know, like he's still my nephew. But Chris doesn't disrespect me. You know, he just doesn't like what I watch. Well, the reason why I don't like what they watch is because I know it lies to them. And that, like in the case of Fox News and that, like that ilk, whether it's Fox News or Newsmax, you know, all that audience, or in the print version of it, is that they literally are sacrificing the security of Americans for shits and giggles, you know, for a cult level inside joke like Jesse Waters and some of these fuckers. I mean, you can tape this and put it on the internet all you want. It'll probably be on YouTube in a little bit when we're done. Is I would have that fucker running from FPVs forever after the shit that he says on TV and the seriousness of actual suffering of people in the world of suffering in America, of the plight of farmers while Trump has to brag about his ballroom. I think people that are that disconnected need to pick up Mariupol with their teeth.
I agree. I've said something, the words harsher
Anyone
than
voting
that.
against my proposal?
Norma, you are bang on right. I think we as the UK will be in for a hard time moving forward. You know, it's the way Trump works. He would never ever admit responsibility for
No.
anything. And you know, he's going to war because of Epstein. I
Do you
mean,
think he
there's
would cry
no
if his
doubt.
own kids were killed in front of him?
No, he wouldn't give a shit. I don't think he would marvel and bask in their death because the world would be focused on him. That was the only reason
Yeah,
he
he
would,
would make
you know, he would
if one of his two bud polyp sons was exterminated him in front of him. Like, you know, do
he
you
would
think he
turn
would
it
like
into a
cry? No, he wouldn't cry. He would turn
turn
it
it
into
into
a
a fucking
yeah.
fiasco. He'd probably start up some gold marketing statue of one of his sons and sell them online. And I mean, that's the garbage person he is. You know, he would turn, and then he would make a day's holiday for it. You know, each year in America, make it. Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of guy he is. You know, he's just a horrible.
Mm.
I don't. He takes the oxygen out of the room. I always tell people, you know, before he came along, we had 12 hours of Putin. We could get a break. The minute he turned up, we just get 24 hours of shit. And
Pretty
most of
much.
it's all about Trump. And if you think Putin's conducted, you know, the biggest land war in Europe since World War II, and Trump still gets 90% of the fucking media. I mean, it's just that's how much he's shielding Putin. He's the trouble he's causing. That he can outshine a dictator that's killed 1.2 million of his own countrymen. You know,
That's right.
in the Western media. I mean, that's how bad Trump is. He takes the
Yeah.
oxygen out of the room.
Adam says that it's a beautiful image of thinking of Jesse Waters running from an FPV drones for. Yes, Adam, this is how I sleep at night. So when I go to sleep and I've got all that neurotic shit going on in my head, I go, wait, hold on. Better image. Ah.
Did Iran find any good pictures on Kash Patel's private email?
Oh yeah, Kash Patel can't secure his own email. I also want to point out that I have an article. I didn't get it done today because I want to get more done with it. But about Pete Hegseth and his whole bravado of, you know, we want to fight without constraints and all this PC bullshit. There are generals who have now stepped in and said, retired generals who said, yeah, this is literally what we don't do. this is literally the thing we don't tell our soldiers so that they go out and commit fucking war crimes. This creates a detriment to our own soldiers, you fuckwit.
This is a guy who's just killed 160 children in a school in Iran. And you just sit there and you hear him talk like that. It's just, I mean, I like to think we're better than that. War crimes go on both sides. You get idiots, as I say, in Ukraine that are going to be doing war crimes. But, it's not systemic like it is in Russia. You're going to get mistakes being made. You're going to get overzealous people that break the law. War crimes should be investigated on both sides. But,
Absolutely.
it's Russia that's hitting schools, hospitals, places of worship. And that's part of their targeting. That's part of their, pattern of striking the backbone of Ukraine, which is the civilians, the infrastructure, which is on the increase here, not decrease. Ever since Trump's inauguration, Russia has bombed more cities because it's doing it and nothing's being done about it.
Right.
Trump's now inviting those very people to America, and wavering sanctions, which is bizarre. Where's America gone? And this week I heard Levitt say he's the leader of the free world. Are you joking? Do you know where I've been for the last 5 years? This is a guy endorsing the mass killing of civilians, since 2014. More so 2022. So, Trump is far from the leader of the free world.
Well, as a reminder to our friends that are viewing this with us, and we'll see this later, we are at the 4-year mark since the Russians were still being thrown out of Kyiv. It's March 27th, 2026, and 4 years ago, right now, the Russians were preparing to pack their shit the fuck up and get out of here. And I was rolling into Bucha and Borodyanka and Makariv. Right behind that, I still, with or without photos and video, which I filmed, I would still remember what it was like to come back into these areas and to be walked through the homes, like my friend Andriy, who lives in Bucha, and the surreal nature of when we went to the house. I actually, the phrase that jumps out of my head, of my mouth, was like, "They shit on the couch." Yeah, they shit on the fucking couch. Holy shit, fucking orcs. And the tables where they had just robbed the local magazine, or like y'all think of it as convenience store, but I'm Ukrainian now. We just say magazine. But they had just stolen all the cans, and like, we don't have video of them doing this, but you can see the debris there, that like you can just see them like popping the stuff open and eating it and just throwing the cans on the ground. It was a melee of just savagery. And the reason why I mentioned that is my friend Sumik Saha, a Bengali journalist who was with us, he did a little interview with me on Vokzalna Street, that on April 8th, 2022. He goes, "How did we get to this?" And so this is what happens when you take young men, throw them into another country, and say, kill, and there's no force. Yeah. And I was juxtaposing against my cynical view of America's behavior in Iraq. Like, for those who don't know my history, I started into this path that led me to Ukraine by going after the torturers that, Abu Ghraib, and especially the Mitchell and Jessen crew, because I still see them as the aberration of a system I can still criticize, but it was still not standard operating procedure to be what the Russians are, and the Chinese and the Khmer Rouge. That's why Mitchell and Jessen were an aberration, even though they did occur, even though Dick Cheney did authorize it. And I have friends who served as interrogators in Iraq, who helped capture, the crew around Zarqawi, who was doing all the bombing campaign in 2006. And so I know good people who did the right thing to juxtapose against bad people who did the wrong thing. And that's what gave me the bearings when I was standing there saying, but we didn't do that. as bad as I can criticize America's policy for invading, and I was completely against it. I got 1,000 things I could say about the whole invasion of Iraq, but it wasn't that. You know, that's not what the mission was. You know, and
No,
here they had their fucking celebration uniforms on in the vehicles in the BMP so they could celebrate on Maidan 4 years ago, right about now. How'd that work out?
I was trying to get out of Mariupol right about now, actually.
Amen, bro.
It didn't work out.
Let's
well
pivot
for
to
me,
that.
be
Thank you. And I can't juxtapose against that, bro. You know that. So let's do this. Would you mind reminding our friends that are here, what 4 years ago was like for you right now?
Right now, we were starting to fold. 501st had disappeared by now. I'd just been blown up by a train IED, so I was back on the position with flash burns and face cream and looking decidedly different. Thinking we're not going to be able to hold this position now. The Russians were now closing in till it still works.
That's right.
We'd been cut off from Azovstal. It's getting harder and harder. They were coming in between the two steel plants. So it was only a matter of time before we knew that eventually we would have to call it a day and it's every man for himself. So I was starting to sort of prepare for my escape and evasion, knowing that I wasn't going to surrender. I was in a position to get out if I could, and I was going to make a break for it. So we were starting to look and assess, if we're going to go and command and control goes down, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? And at this time as well, we just lost Dima, my friend Dima, who in his BTR, it was the Russians were coming really into the steelworks now, taking up positions we formerly held. There were the other side of walls and a bit like, the end scenes of Saving Private Ryan. It was remarkably like that. The Russians were blowing holes in walls, sending infantry through. It was hand-to-hand, close quarter fighting. So we knew this was coming to the end, and we would have to try and break out. That was my 4 years ago today, coming to the end of March.
Amazing. Well, bro, I love you with all my heart. That's why I love doing this work with you. I think
love talking to you. Love talking to the guys, and nice to see some familiar faces back again.
Yeah, great supporting team. They message a lot during our off time when we're not here. And I want to thank everyone who has been showing up. And also make sure if you aren't already subscribed to Sean's account, which I think you are, that you do so. And please consider a paid subscription so that we keep this good brother working as a journalist. And it was nice when I was putting our promo poster together. I was like, I need a journalist photo of him.
I tell you what I did. I have got to tell you is that we've now,
Yeah.
if it's not been done already, we're now submitting the paperwork to sue the Russian Federation, which is fantastic news because that's been 2
Yeah.
years working towards that. It will be a landmark case as we discussed, and even on the paperwork, I got a copy of it. It says Shaun Pinner versus the Russian Federation. I had to take a look at it and go, So, but yeah, we're looking to hopefully. I mean, they stole our house. If we could get some money back from my wife, which was a nest egg of retirement from Russians, how we were treated, then hopefully it will set precedents, and then it'll open the doors up for any Ukrainian affected by the war or Russian aggression to then claim off the Russian state. So we're kind of hoping that because we got a verdict in Kyiv last year. We're now looking to enforce that verdict through the UK courts, which the Russians used themselves. So we're kind of hoping to get the resolution recognised in the UK, which the paperwork's just been submitted. So it's a big step for us, this. So I want to thank everyone who supported it through the crowdfunder as well. All the support goes to helping us get, our court case going, and because it's very expensive, even though we've got pro bono lawyers, we still have to organise the travel, flights, cars, food. We have to support Brahim in his application to get his passport, and all this costs money. It costs 10 grand just to get the court fees. to be able to mount a case, which our lawyer firm's been amazing at doing. So it's been a big step for these 2 years to get this court case going. We're now going to have a news article, hopefully in the Sun, very shortly to talk about it and do some promo stuff for it. But yeah, it's a massive case, one of a kind at the moment. So hopefully we will get some justice.
Well, I'm with you on that to the last of my breath, bro. So thank you for sharing that with us, and don't hesitate to keep us in the know on what we collectively can do. And enjoy your training. I know you got to get some rest, bro, because you got to get up and
back
go
in the class tomorrow.
Yeah, you got to go back into training mode in the morning. So
yeah,
for that
it's been
purpose,
a pleasure again. It's been a
we
pleasure.
will land it, and we will say to everyone, because you know how we do this, right? Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
See
See you later, everybody.
І пиздець Російської Федерації, і пиздець Трамп, і Путін хуйло.